Welcome, everyone. I am Beverly Mishkin, Director of Case Management and Senior Services at Jewish Family and Children's Service of Greater Mercer County. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today for Mortars Without Borders, a taste of Passover as Beverly Rubman and Andrea Gaynor explore different traditions from communities around the world. They will be providing a brief overview of the Passover Seder plate and a more in-depth exploration on the origins of charoset and how it is interpreted in recipes around the world. Andrea will also lead a demonstration for an Austro-Hungarian and Venetian charoset recipe. Recipes will be shared after the event for all to try. We are excited to offer this program as we approach the Passover holiday with renewed hope for the coming year. I would like to introduce you now to our presenters. Andrea Gaynor is a licensed clinical social worker and geriatric care manager. She works with our clients in the Secure at Home program to help seniors age safely in their own homes. Beverly Rubman is part of our senior services department, providing chaplaincy services to our elderly clients, as well as leading our caregiver and bereavement support groups. Before I turn the presentation over to them, please note questions can be submitted in the Q&A or chat at any time and will be addressed following the presentation. Andrea, Beverly, take it away.
Okay, here we go. All right. I have to just figure out if I need my glasses. Sorry, guys. We're getting ready for Passover. As I said, it's a week and a half away. We all know the items on our Seder plate. Matzah, karpas, the parsley or other spring vegetables, maror, bitter herbs, two possibilities, you put them on your plate. Beitzah, roasted egg, zroa, roasted bone, shank bone, and charoset. So today we're focusing on my favorite Seder plate item, and that's the charoset, usually referred to as the mortar, symbolizing the lot of the Hebrew slaves whose lives were embittered by hard labor with brick and mortar. But wait, as we all know, while charoset is eaten in combination with the bitter herbs, with the maror, and is in my family, and I think other traditions, as part of the Hillel sandwich with the matzah, it's actually very sweet. So what's going on here? This is not exactly bitterness, and that's what I sort of started looking into to figure out where we were and where this came from. First off, it's interesting that charoset is not mentioned in the Bible. Unlike matzah, Pesach, and maror, it was added to our celebration of this most important holiday by the rabbis of the Talmud, my buddies, the capital R rabbis. And if you know anything about Talmudic study, you know that there's always more than one answer to any question that's been asked. So, what is the charoset and why do we eat it? As I said before, while charoset symbolizes symbolizes something that doesn't sound particularly appetizing, the mortar, it is, as we know, delicious. It didn't have to be, but it is. What it is made from will vary depending on where your family comes from. In general, it's a combination of fruit, nuts, spices, and wine. In Ashkenazi tradition, that's apples, walnuts, cinnamon, and wine. But there have been Jews in many lands, some of them long before Jews migrated to Eastern Europe, and so there are as many recipes as there are local ingredients to make something that looks or feels like mortar. In a few minutes, Andrea will make two different varieties, as we've discussed, Ashkenazi and Venetian. It's sort of going from the, I don't know what to say. Anyway, the Ashkenazi is probably the more familiar. The Venetian is so exotic, it's incredible. And we'll share some interesting and unusual ingredients from around the world. Okay, right now, I just want to tell you about one ingredient that you might not think of, and that's the symbolic straw to make the bricks. Remember, that's what the Israelites are doing. They're making bricks for Pharaoh, and they have to do this in mortar and straw. Okay, some traditions say that the cinnamon or other spices represents the straw, but not in ground form. Instead, you need to use the cinnamon sticks, cut it into Cut them thin and fine to resemble the straw and add it to the rest of the mortar. So you actually get the look of the straw in your mortar. There's also a tradition coming from both Greece and Gibraltar that adds a small pinch of actual brick or clay into the mixture to make it even more like mortar used to make bricks. When I told this to Andrea, she was not impressed. She did not like, look at her face. She did not like the idea of you putting a pinch of dirt into your charoset, but it's symbolic and it's a little bit, and it adds to the symbol. Okay. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do anything, but it's an interesting idea. Many centuries later, this literal approach to charoset was used by Jewish soldiers fighting in the American Civil War. In her book, Jewish Cooking in America, Jo Nathan shared a memoir of a Jewish Union soldier from Cleveland who participated in an improvised Seder while at the front in West Virginia. The soldiers managed to obtain hagadot and matzah, lamb and hard cider. I guess they couldn't get wine, eggs, bitter herbs of various kinds. That was the easy part. But they had no idea what to do about the charoset. I think these men were obviously not the ones who were doing the Passover food prep for their families, because it's not really that hard. But they put an actual brick on the table, which was, as they said, as this memoirist said in his memoir, rather hard to digest, but reminded us by looking at it for what purpose it was intended. So that the brick is, you could if you wanted to put a brick on your Seder table too instead of charoset, but I don't recommend it. Okay. As noted above, the usual explanation of charoset is that it comes from a word for mortar, and it reminds us of the slave labor of the Israelites, and it is eaten with maror, bitter herbs, to temper the bitterness. That's pretty straightforward, but nothing in Jewish law and tradition is ever that simple. And there are other deeper reasons for charoset on the Seder plate. And I'll just give you 3 of them. 1, in the Palestinian Jerusalem Talmud, there's a connection made between the Paschal lamb, remember that lamb, and the charoset. When God spared the firstborn of the Israelites during the 10th plague, he commanded them to sprinkle the blood of the lamb on the doorposts as a sign for that night and for all future generations. Then God passed over the houses of the Israelites. We're not going to put blood in our charoset. That is not a Jewish way of doing things. But the memory was amended to substitute wine for the blood. So wine is referred to in the book of Genesis in one little passage as the blood of the grape. And that's one reason it's included in the charoset. So you're not just getting something to bind your charoset, as you'll see or you're actually getting a memory of that blood on the doorpost and that Paschal lamb. So that's one reason. Second reason, there's a deep connection between Passover and Seder time with the biblical book of the Song of Songs, which is read during Passover. On its surface, Song of Songs is a series of love poems between human lovers. I think many people know Dodi Li va'ani lo haroeh b'shoshanim. My beloved is mine and I am my beloved. A lot of people use that at weddings and inside rings, etc. But on a deeper level, the rabbis view this as a love story between God and the Jewish people. And within that love story, there are many references to the fruits of Israel that are in season in the spring, and all of them have symbolic meaning. For example, in one passage, God, the lover, is likened to a fruit tree standing in the middle of a green forest. And you've got all these references to other fruits and other spices and other things. It's heavy stuff. It's really complicated. I'll spare you the details, but it gives you the idea that it connects once again with the spices, the fragrance, everything about Song of Songs is connected to God and to Passover season. Third reason is my preferred explanation, and it has to do with women and apple trees, but in a very positive way. Okay. One noted Babylonian rabbi explained that it was because of the merit of the righteous women of that generation that the Jews were redeemed from slavery in Egypt. We all, if you go back and read the Bible story, you're going to see a lot of women in the story, saving Moses, saving the Jewish people one way or another. When Pharaoh treated the Israelite slaves with great harshness, including the slaying of the male babies, this is now a midrash, this is not in the Bible. The Israelite men were disheartened and wanted to give up. It was the women who rallied to continue the people of Israel. They would go down to their working husbands in the field, bathe and feed them, and then conceive children in the fields, maybe under the apple trees or some other tree. And when it was time to give birth, the women would leave the houses, lie under these trees to protect the babies from Pharaoh's evil decree. And the righteous midwives would help them avoid the decree that they had to kill every baby. Okay. I'm not sure there were apple trees in ancient Egypt, but there must have been some in Babylonia. And you get the idea. This is what the women and the apple trees were all about. And they were the righteous women for which the miracle of the Jewish people was created. Thus, the charoset, which contains apples or other fruit, is really about Jewish women and God's way of relating to slavery and being a slave. While it was horrendously bitter, the Jewish women did not lose hope, and God was with them, raising a new generation of Jewish children and ultimately freeing us all from bondage and leading us to the Torah and Mount Sinai. So we dip our moror, enslavement, bitterness, into charoset, which is more than mortar, it's hope and caring, reflecting the general optimism of the Passover Seder. In fact, the implication of the charoset is even broader. We're able to restore our own dignity during slavery by our own actions. We were never abandoned by God, even in the depths of slavery. And in a strange way, there was some positive dynamics set in motion by the women in particular during slavery times. And all of that is wrapped up in this little container of charoset that we have on our Seder plate. So that's the symbolism. I'll turn it over now to Andrea, who will start talking about the nuts and bolts, as it were, the recipes.
Thank you, Beverly. That was terrific. And later, I think you'll talk about what's typical for different countries around the world and their charoset. So I'm going to start with my family's charoset. I call it Austro-Hungarian. It can also be referred to as Ashkenazic or Galician. It comes from the region from which my grandparents came, as in many, many cases. It became Poland after World War I, and then it is now, it's currently part of the Ukraine. So, and this particular charoset is also very typical of Middle Europe and Northern Europe as well. So actually, I like to start with the nuts. And this is my grandmother's wooden bowl. It's got to be over 100 years. I use it once a year. I use it for charoset. It can be made in a food processor, but I really prefer to do it this way. So, and I've scaled down this recipe just for the purposes of demonstration, but again, the recipe will be available to you afterward. So I have almonds and walnuts, and I toast them first. So you can put them on a cookie sheet in the oven for a very short time, or in a pan, or even in the microwave. It just brings out their flavor, but you have to be careful because they say there's 3 stages of browning or toasting nuts: not ready, not ready, and burnt. So you kind of got to catch it before it burns. So I'm going to start chopping. And make it as fine as you like. Our family prefers it a little chunkier. Okay, and then I put in apples, whatever apples you like is the apple to use. I like Honeycrisp. You can mix apples, you can mix tart and sweet together. You may want to put me on mute if this is too loud. Just try to bring it all together. Okay. Okay. It can be a little finer than that, but I'll keep chopping after I put the other ingredients in. So I like to add a little honey. Just gives it an extra sweetness, and it's also a nice binder. Cinnamon, And finally, the wine, which also is symbolic, as Beverly described. But it also gives it a nice flavor. And it really tastes like Passover. Okay. Just gonna stir it up. Okay, and then this can go to the bowl for your Passover table. And again, this is a little chunkier than I prefer it, but it's a demonstration, so you could do whatever you'd like. It should be more of a, I'd say, a mortar consistency. Okay. I wanted to talk about the inspiration for this program. So Mortars Without Borders, this was cut out of a Hadassah magazine 25 years ago. And you can see here, I tried to recreate, because I have the same mortar and pestle from many years ago. So this is where it came from, and our team started talking, and we thought this would be a fun program. And I've always wanted to try some of these recipes, and it's always too crazy in my house before the Seder to do that. Okay, let me move this out of the way. I'm gonna, and then with this Ashkenazic recipe, Beverly will explain later certain spices that are used in other regions around the world, such as ginger and cardamom and nutmeg and so forth, orange rind, that can be added. This could be fusion. You could add some other things to this to make it a little bit different if you like. So this one, this is Beverly Rubman's family's favorite charoset. This is the Venetian one from Venice. And this has a lot of ingredients, but it's so beautifully visual. Okay. So you, and again, it's scaled down a bit, but the exact amounts will be online. So it starts out with chestnut paste, then chopped dates, chopped figs, Beverly, this really looks good. Poppy seeds, chopped walnuts. Again, I like to toast the walnuts or almonds before I use them. Almonds, pine nuts. I advise you to prep all this sometime before the Seder, because it's a lot of chopping, but it's worth it. This is the zest from an orange. Golden raisins. Chopped apricots. Brandy. And honey, also as a binder. Okay. Combine it. It is visually really beautiful. Definitely leaves the Ashkenazic one in the dust in terms of the visual appeal.
And because of the brandy, it really, if for some reason you don't eat it all at once, it stays very nicely. to be eaten with
I
anything.
bet this can keep.
Oh, look at that.
You could probably really make this in advance and this would keep for a couple, it probably only get better.
Mhm.
So that is the very beautiful one from Venice. And I decided I'm treating myself to a little brandy, l'chaim, have
L'chaim.
a sweet Passover. And I actually did a little research to see what kind of brandy was kosher for Passover. And actually cognac kept coming up. And my understanding is cognac is the champagne of the brandies. So it could only be better. And there are some brands, Dupuy, I found, Depuy, and also Herzog makes a kosher for Passover. Yeah, so really that would work fine, the cognac.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes, okay. Okay, so do you want to take it back and talk about ingredients that are used in other recipes?
Sure, sure. And jump in whenever, whenever you want to also. I mean, the first thing is,
Okay,
many,
sure.
just like you saw in the Venetian recipe, it sort of goes, and I was going to say, every community has its history of where people came from. So many Jews are Sephardim. They came out of Spain, but then they went to Holland, or they went to the New World, or they went, maybe to Italy, Turkey, etc. Then you had Jews who were always there. They were in Babylonia, they were in Iran, they were in Persia, they were in Syria, etc., etc. India, you have Jews in many, many different places, all of North Africa, and they all have different stories and different traditions. Some of them, though, the Sephardic ones in particular, tend to use all the biblical fruits from the land of Israel. So they'll do grapes, that's wine, wheat, little matzah meal, fig, that's how they do their binding, figs, dates, pomegranates, olives, I don't know, and no barley, because barley isn't Pesach. Some of the Moroccan communities will do something like that, a lot of dates, they're really heavy on the dates, but they'll also roll them up into balls and then dust them with a little bit of cinnamon, maybe a little bit of cocoa, but I think that's a little New Age, and maybe even a little coconut if you want to do it New Age. So again, visually on the plate, you can have these little charoset balls that people can share. So it's a different look. The other thing is, you saw from the Venetian one, pine nuts. If you come from a country with a lot of pine trees like Italy, North Africa, you'll have pine nuts. The other thing North African Jews do sometimes is add a hard-boiled egg, again for binding. You've got so many other things in there that you're never going to have a problem. It's not like you're eating the egg. You'd never know it. It's just there to give it some consistency. As Andrea mentioned, spices vary, whatever you have. Ginger, cardamom, cloves, nutmeg, and in Yemen, chili powder, chili peppers, something chili for a bite with a little bit of spice, a little bit of, a hot spice, not just a sweet spice. And that's Yemen in particular. Israeli Jews often make it into almost a dessert, a charoset that's almost a dessert, with bananas in particular, dates, candied fruit peel, orange juice, and sugar. And they could actually serve it. I mean, any of these could be a dessert, really. Andrea, you found another one from your friend Sally's daughter-in-law.
Yeah, so
Really
my friend Sally has a daughter-in-law from St. Martin. They're Tunisian French Jews, and their family makes like a jam out of grapes. I think they might be indigenous to St. Martin, or when they're in France, whatever's indigenous there. I have the impression they're very tiny, maybe like champagne grapes. They're cooked up with quince, some lemon juice, almonds, and pinole nuts, pine nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And that is their family's tradition. So I've learned, and I'm sure Beverly, you too, this is more of an art than a science. It's about what your family likes, how you want to fine tune it. Some of it, of course, is up to availability. I was reading something about a Russian charoset, and it said, sadly, they put almonds and walnuts in if they're available. And they're so readily available that we take advantage of, we take it for granted what we have.
Mhm.
And now you can do anything because so much is available to us, but it still isn't like that in many places. And many of our ancestors had to use whatever was right there.
Mhm. I was going to add one more New World recipe, just like the one that Andrea just mentioned that came from St. Martin. You know, remember the Sephardic Jews, you know, in many cases as either as conversos or otherwise came to the New World, and the oldest Jewish community in the New World is in the Suriname, Recife, Venezuelan area, which is northern South America, and that area. And there's a recipe that my friend makes every year, and then we trade off, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So it was formerly a Dutch Guyana, and so the Jews went from Spain to Holland, and then across to the Dutch provinces, to the Dutch colonies at that point. And this is a big stew, almost like a compote. It has coconut, walnuts, raisins, dried apples, prunes, dried apricots, dried pears, cherry jam, cinnamon, and wine. And it stews for, I don't know, maybe an hour or so. So it isn't as visually pretty because it gets a little bit gloppy, but with the coconut in it, it is just really fantastic. It's really another delicious version. And my other recommendation is I've made a discovery of the equivalent of the cookie exchange, the Christmas cookie exchange. And that is the charoset exchange. That if you want a variety of charosets on your Seder table and you don't really want to make them all, you can get, this is what I've done. I have friends, we each make one kind that we like. I always do the Venetian. Another friend always does the Suriname, and then possibly another version. Somebody else does something else. And if you make a large enough amount, you just give little bits to everybody so you can have interesting charosets on your Seder table. And part of the point of that, it's again, everything is symbolic. Everything we're doing is symbolic. It's symbolic of the Jewish people we've spread from Mitzrayim, from Egypt to everywhere, from those narrow places to everywhere that we've been. And it brings those traveling Jews, those wandering Arameans, wherever we are, back together at our Seder table in a lot of ways that's really, really meaningful. And also, you can't assume that everyone at your Seder table is going to come from the same tradition, given the Jewish community now. So it's another reflection of who we are as the Jewish people. And it's wonderful, and it happens to be delicious. So I think that's.
Yeah. Are there any questions? Are there any questions or comments?
Are some of you actually going to try some of these recipes? What do you think?
I'm going to try the Venetian, definitely. You know, this would be good if you make like a spice cake and make that for the filling.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these recipes.
Yep.
Eventually, you know, after Passover.
So it's funny, I was thinking about the Ashkenazic recipe, leaving out the wine, adding more spices, and you can actually get puff pastry and make it into a strudel.
Mm-hmm.
Bake it. I just thought about that last night. So yeah, these can take on many different purposes. We just don't really think about it until Passover.
Right. Where does one get chestnut paste? It is available in stores. This is where things get a little complicated. Chestnut, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to find kosher LePesach chestnut paste because it has sugar. It has a sweetener in it. It does exist, but it's not always easy to find.
Okay, so I have a suggestion.
Mhm.
Galil makes kosher for Passover chestnuts.
Right.
They're all peeled and they're ready to eat in a bag, like a foil bag.
Also put
You
them in
can take those chestnuts and put them in a food processor maybe add a little bit of water, and I think that would work. Don't you, Beverly?
And maybe a little sugar, because chestnut paste is sweet.
They are there. Yes, you could add some sugar to it and a little water and get like a pasty consistency. And I think that would work just fine. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find kosher for Passover chestnut paste.
Right, right. I will admit, in days when I wasn't paying quite as much attention, I could get it with just sugar in it and use it, but it wouldn't have a hechsher. But so I make my own. And yeah, you can get the chestnuts.
But I know ShopRite sells Galil chestnuts.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Is that what you did?
That what you did, Andrea?
Is that what I did? Yes, that's what I did. Nancy Osborne. Yes, it works. It works. They're a little, they can be a little dry, so you'll have to definitely add some liquid, but they're, they work. It's fine.
I think that's what you need the brandy for also, the brandy, put a little bit more in if
The
it's.
brandy makes everything delicious.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we're done. So the recipes will be available online. I guess on the JFCS website. That's my understanding.
Mhm.
And feel free to email any of us. I'm Andrea G@jfcsonline.org. If you have any questions,
And the recipes will be,
recipes will be emailed to all attendees. Beth Dempsey Rule just told us that. So you will receive all these recipes plus more. Beverly did a lot of research and has some really cool recipes.
I can't wait to see them. So, and pick one out. So I just want to thank you both, and I want to thank everyone for coming today. And just to remind everybody that at JFCS, we are about help, hope, and healing. We are committed to helping in any way we can through our counseling, food pantry, and delivery, and senior services. We are proud to continue to offer these services in line with health and safety guidelines. Learn more about our programs at www.jfcsonline.org. And we wish you Aziz and Pesach. And again, thank you to Beverly and Andrea. I think it was a great combo of learning all about the symbolism that I really didn't know that much about. And
I didn't either.
because I'm a standard Ashkenazi charoset, so this gives me something. And now that I'm
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you so much for attending. And I wish you all a very sweet Passover.
Peace and
Peace
Pesach
and
for
Pesach.
everyone. Mhm.
Thank you, everyone. Everybody have a Zis and Pesach and be safe.
Yes,
thank you, Ira.
Thank you.
Bye.